This is Dr.RED Panda.
In a country where people bow instead of hug, where silence is golden and modesty is the rule, why are grown adults paying to be tied up, humiliated, or even dressed like schoolgirls, in cafés of all places? Welcome to one of Japan's most secret worlds. Hey everyone, I'm Dr.RED Panda. Today we're gonna peel back the layers on something most outsiders never get to see: Japan's underground fetish cafés. You won't find these spots on any tourist map. No big signs, no flashy ads. Yet somehow they're alive and kicking, hidden away in Tokyo's basements, quiet alleys, and secret online groups. And these cafés, they're not about coffee or cake. They offer something totally different: a chance to escape into fantasy, even if just for a little while. But how did places like this pop up in a society that's all about keeping things neat, proper, and in control? The origins of Japan's fetish cafés. To understand Japan's underground fetish cafés, we have to rewind back to the post-World War II era, when the nation was rebuilding not just its cities but its identity. During the American occupation, Western ideas of sexuality and entertainment began to clash with traditional Japanese values. It was during this time that Japan's massive adult entertainment industry began to take root. By the 1950s and 60s, strip theaters, pink films, and underground SM clubs began popping up in Tokyo's nightlife districts. These weren't just places of indulgence. They became pressure valves for a society that demanded conformity, obedience, and emotional restraint. In the 1980s and 90s, Japan entered its economic bubble era. Money flowed, and with it came more specialized sexual subcultures. Themed bars emerged for every taste imaginable: school uniforms, nurse outfits, dominatrixes, even foot fetish salons. What began as fringe clubs for a niche audience slowly morphed into the cafe format we see today: casual, intimate, and slightly more acceptable on the surface. But make no mistake, these places still operate in the shadows. Many exist just within the boundaries of legality. They use coded language online. Entrance often requires referrals or membership. Why? Because while Japan has one of the largest adult industries in the world, public discourse around sex remains deeply conservative. Culturally, this duality isn't surprising. In Japanese society, there's a strong divide between taitmei, public face, and han, true feelings. Fetish cafés allow people to drop their masks, to express suppressed desires in a space that feels safe, hidden, and judgment-free. So, what began as backroom fantasies during the post-war chaos evolved into a full-fledged network of cafés across Japan's major cities. And today, they're more diverse and more discreet than ever before. Inside the many faces of fetish cafés. All right, let's get into the wild part. Not all fetish cafés in Japan are the same. And honestly, that's what makes them so fascinating. Some are playful and even a little silly. Others, pretty intense. But they all have one thing in common: they're built around fantasy. A space where you can drop your daily mask and be whoever or whatever you want to be. So what kinds of fantasies are we talking about? Let's start with one of the most extreme and often misunderstood genres out there. First, S&M cafés, where power gets flipped. These places are all about domination and submission. Customers pay to be tied up, blindfolded, slapped, stepped on, even yelled at. Sounds intense? It is, but it's also incredibly structured. The women running the show, usually called mistresses or queens, know exactly what they're doing. They dress in leather, vinyl, or even traditional kimono with a cruel twist. They're trained not just in performance but also in safety. First-timers sometimes get a full briefing: what's allowed, what's not, and most importantly, the safe word. And here's the thing: it's not really about pain. It's about control. Imagine being a high-powered CEO all week, and then coming here to have someone else take over for a while. Weird? Maybe. Therapeutic? For some people, absolutely. Now, if S&M cafés focus on power and surrender, there's another kind of cafe that zooms in on something much more specific, yet just as powerful for those who are into it. Second, foot fetish cafés, the world at your feet. Literally. Yes, this is a real thing. And yes, it's surprisingly popular. In these cafes, customers might sit at a lower level, while women rest their feet on a glass table above. Some let you touch, some let you massage, and some, well, offer a smell menu. I'll let your imagination take it from there. Socks, stockings, shoes, every detail matters. It's all about sensory focus. To outsiders it might seem odd, but to the regulars it's comforting, even relaxing. It's less about sexuality and more about fixation, a kind of quiet obsession with one part of the body. Of course, not every cafe is about being passive. Some invite customers to take part in the fantasy, stepping into a fully immersive role-playing world. That leads us to third, roleplay cafes. You pick the fantasy. These cafes are basically interactive theater, where you're not just watching, you're in it. Want to relive your high school days with a strict teacher scolding you? Want to be a prisoner in a fake jail cell run by a vampire nurse? Want to act like a shy student being bullied by mean girls? Yup, you can book it. It's like live-action improv. Some customers have specific scripts in mind. Others just give a vague idea and let the staff take it from there. And it's not always about sex. Sometimes it's about reversing trauma, confronting shame, or just reliving something that gave them emotional intensity. And if you think that's pushing boundaries, wait till you hear about this next one. It's one of the most controversial, but also emotionally complex. Fourth, infantilism cafes, not what you think. Here, the goal isn't sex at all. It's emotional comfort. Some customers want to be bottle-fed, wrapped in blankets, or gently rocked to sleep. They want to be taken care of like a baby, or sometimes like a pet. Sounds strange? Sure. But think about it. In a society that demands so much responsibility, pressure, and emotional control, isn't it kind of understandable that some people just want to let go completely? Inside, it's all soft colors, baby music, plush toys. And the staff? They're like caregivers, gentle, nurturing, never mocking. With all these intense experiences, you might wonder, how do these cafes keep everything from spiraling out of control? The answer, strict rules. These places run on strict rules. You can't just walk in and do whatever you want. There are boundaries for everything. No touching without permission. No breaking character unless allowed. No real names, no photos or filming, and absolutely no harassment of any kind. Staff are trained not just in performance, but in emotional safety. Once your session's over, there's often an aftercare moment, like sitting down for tea or just decompressing with some small talk. It's not just about turning on the fantasy, it's also about turning it off safely. So, why do people go? To someone on the outside, this all might seem bizarre or even a little messed up. But to the people who go, these cafes are a lifeline. They're not just looking for thrills. They're looking for a space where they can feel something. Relief, control, comfort, validation, maybe even connection. For a few hours, they get to stop being who society expects them to be, and just be. Real stories from customers and staff. So far, we've talked about what happens inside these fetish cafes. But now let's talk about the people. Who actually goes to these places? And who are the people playing these roles day after day? You might be surprised by the answers. Forget the stereotype of creepy old men in trench coats. A huge chunk of the customer base is completely ordinary. Salarymen, office ladies, even couples. Some are in their 20s. Some are in their 60s. Some come once for curiosity. Others come every week like clockwork. Take this guy, for example, let's call him Mr. Sato. He's in his 40s, wears a suit, works for a big corporation. He comes to the same S&M cafe every Friday night. Not for sex, not for anything physical, but to be scolded. That's it. He kneels on the floor while the queen berates him for being a bad employee or a useless man. Why? Because, as he put it, all week, I have to be perfect. Here, I get to be human. There's also a woman I read about who visits a foot fetish cafe. She doesn't identify as kinky, but says she just likes the feeling of being admired, quietly, without pressure. For her, it's not about domination. It's about being noticed, for once. And then there are regulars who come just to talk. They're lonely. Japan has a major social isolation problem, especially among men. In a fetish cafe, weirdly enough, it feels safer to be vulnerable because everyone's already showing a hidden side. Now, what about the women and sometimes men who work there? First off, most of them are not sex workers, and many cafes don't offer anything sexual at all. They're performers, therapists, sometimes even low-key psychologists. Some are students trying to make money, others are part-time actors, and some genuinely love the art of roleplay or domination. And yes, some enjoy the power not just over their clients, but over how they're seen. One dominatrix I read about said, "In the real world, men ignore me. Here they kneel. But it's not all glamorous." Many staff talk about emotional fatigue. When you're constantly pretending, constantly managing other people's feelings, it takes a toll. Some cafes actually rotate staff or offer mental health support to help workers avoid burnout. And here's something interesting. Many staff say they don't judge their clients at all. In fact, they feel closer to them than to people they meet in everyday life. Because here, people are honest. They're weird, sure, but they're real. From the outside, these cafes might look like seedy clubs. But once you step in, it's something else entirely. It's about connection, emotion, role reversal. Sometimes it's even about healing. For some people, it's the only place where they can cry, or laugh, or say what they're afraid to say anywhere else. Are these cafes strange? Yeah, no doubt. But they're also strangely human. Controversies and the future of fetish cafes. So, now that we've peeked behind the curtain, what's next for these underground cafes? The truth is, they exist in a pretty tricky spot. On one hand, they're a part of Japan's unique culture, quietly thriving in the shadows. On the other hand, they're often seen as taboo, loved by some, shamed by others, and misunderstood by almost everyone else. One big challenge these cafes face is navigating the law. They usually walk a very fine line. Legally speaking, things are pretty gray. Most try to avoid offering anything that could be considered outright sexual services, so they can keep operating without trouble. But that's easier said than done. Sometimes police crackdowns happen, especially when rumors spread or complaints pop up. Socially, it's even more complicated. Japan is famous for its polite, reserved public face. Sex and fetishism are still off-limits topics in many circles. So customers and staff alike keep their involvement secret, which adds to the mystique and stigma. There's also the worry of exploitation or abuse, which critics raise anytime these cafes pop up in the news. Supporters push back, saying that consent and safety are taken seriously, and that these cafes can be safe spaces for people to explore themselves. But the internet is shaking things up. Online communities, live streams, and social media are bringing parts of this culture into the open, sometimes with backlash, sometimes with acceptance. Some cafes have started offering virtual experiences or using apps to connect with customers anonymously. This could mean a future where fetish cafes are more accessible, and maybe even more normalized. Will fetish cafes ever leave the underground? Maybe. As society changes, taboos shift. What was once hidden can become part of popular culture. We've seen that with maid cafes, cosplay, even anime itself. But the core need they fulfill, fantasy, escape, emotional connection, probably won't change. For many, these cafes aren't just entertainment. They're a lifeline, a place where people can drop their masks, be vulnerable, and find acceptance in a world that demands so much. And that's a wrap for this episode of the video. I'm DR.RED Panda. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Until next time, take care.